You're listening to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast, home of the 2-hour deep dive interview with gold, platinum, and multi-platinum bands, including Stained, Blue Rodeo, The Arkells, Finger 11, Big Wreck, Moist, Bedouin Soundclash, I Mother Earth, Ill Scarlet, Neverending White Lights, Thornley, and many more. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, as well as share, comment, and like. Now let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are joined by a very special guest. He's achieved a level of mastery as a drummer for not one, but two platinum bands, first with Big Sugar and now with the Trews. He's putting a smile on thousands of faces with his new single, Good Morning, as the Whiskey Hunter. So welcome to the podcast, Chris Gormley. Chris, how are you? And how early is too early to start drinking whiskey? That's my question.
Joel, it's never too early. If you would have asked me this 3 years ago before I had my twins, I might have had a different answer, but now it's never too early. Breakfast, lunch for sure. Sometimes it's breakfast, whatever you got to do to get through the day, get through the week.
All bets are off once you have not just one kid, but twins, right?
Totally.
Sometimes you got to take the edge off. Sometimes you need a little help to get to sleep. I hear you.
Yeah.
It's all good. So I'm loving the background here. So for our listeners, for those watching, can you kind of point out what's going on there? We got, looks like whiskey flavors from all over the world.
Yeah. I mean, it's been more organized before. It's still kind of organized. Up top, across the top would be all my single malt scotches. In the middle is more American whiskeys, my bourbons. And then on the bottom row is Canadians, not for any specific reason. And yeah, this is the Whiskey Hunter headquarters here behind me. It's not that I did this on purpose. It's just the best kind of angle for my basement. So
it's a nice background. I like it. So we're going to do a full 2-hour deep dive. We're going to go through your entire life, career, discography. And I think we're going to end up talking about the Whiskey Hunter at the end. So new music, what's going on with the videos, and, kind of the viral nature of the new single. We're going to end up there. We're going to get started at the beginning. I like to show the journey that you've been on, this remarkable journey to get to where you are today. You're not born with this innate talent. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of long-term vision. We'll go through all that. I like to start the interviews by sharing with our listeners how the guests and I got here today, just to show the importance of networking, of building community, of fostering relationships. So in our case, this goes back just a few days ago. So our mutual friend, Neil Lyons, reached out to me. This is a member of The North, an amazing band that I saw a few times in the Toronto area. He's also a professional skier. This guy won the X Games and the Worlds back in 2000. So a remarkable individual. He reached out to me. He said, "Hey, I just listened to your recent episode with Suave Pure, the drummer for Ill Scarlet, and it reminded me that I know someone who would be an amazing guest for your podcast. He mentions you, and I think within 24 hours, we had an interview date scheduled. So it was very fast, and here we are today. And the only way I could kick this interview off properly was to get Neil to send in a few kind words. So I have a quote here from Neil for you, and it goes something like this. Let me just make sure we're ready here. So Neil says, "In my opinion, Chris, and his brother Matt for that matter, are likely the most talented musicians to come out of the late 90s, early 2000s Streetsville, Meadowvale music scene, which we all know was chock full of legit players. The Gormleys were certainly an influence on me as I moved away from my hardcore beginnings and formed the North. I would never have dreamed of matching their musicianship, but in setting the bar so high, I think it helped us reach a level we wouldn't have otherwise reached musically. I'm proud to say I've shared the stage with Chris a few times. He helped make me look good at a few jam nights back in the day. Oh, and a side note, they were also the first band I ever saw cover the band before. So on a low-key level, that had an effect on me as well. Sometimes it just takes knowing someone else has the same taste as you to see where the vibe takes you. And then ask him about his time performing on cruise ships back in the day. I'm sure he's got some tales. Whether they're all PG-13 or not is another question." So that's from Neil.
Cool, man. Yeah, me and Neil go way back. The Streets. I know Suave also, by the way. He's part of that whole Streetsville scene way back in the day.
There's Anthony Carone, who ends up with the Arkells. Lots of people there. Billy Talent is a Mississauga Streetsville band, right?
Yep. they're part of my early beginnings as a musician also. So we'll get into that later. Cool. Well, thanks,
Awesome.
Neil. Thanks, man. That's
There.
some kind words.
From Neil, and let's go all the way back to the beginning. So you're clearly passionate about music. Where does this love of music come from? And is there a specific first musical memory that jumps out at you?
Um, there definitely is, but it's later than I think a lot of musicians would guess. Like someone that's been doing this for now like 3 decades. I think other fellow musicians or other people would just assume that I've been doing this since I was a kid, but I'm not one of those guys that's been doing it since I was a kid. Like as a kid, I had many other different hobbies, and I didn't actually get into music till I was 18, which is quite late for most musicians that end up doing it for a living. Um, I mean, I have one memorable moment which happened when I was in grade 12. I played basketball like through my whole elementary school, right through high school, uh, quite competitively, and that was my only focus. I mean, I had some musical things happening in my life at the time, but this is the main thing that kind of turned the switch for me. One of the guys on my team, Sean Lessie, I'm sure he still plays drums, but I don't think he's ever played professionally. But I was at his house for lunch, and he's like, "Hey, man, you want to see my drum set?" And this was to a guy who was just like, I only care about basketball and Michael Jordan. So yeah, I'll see your drum set, but I don't really care." And he took me down and he played for me. And that was like, it was like, I can remember the moment. I can remember me sitting beside him and him starting and just being like, "What are you doing? Like, what's happening right now? How did you just, you're a normal guy, but then you sit down and then you become this guy that's like a wizard playing." And I don't remember how good or bad he was, but it was magical for me. And I just remember going, I got to do that. I want to do what you're doing. How do I do that? And that was it. Like I went home, I saw how much money I had. I got to get a drum kit. I talked to him, like, who do you take drum lessons with? I took drum lessons with his teacher like 2 weeks later, who became like my mentor for the next 7 years. I took lessons with him every week, I think, for the next 5 to 7 years. Mike Syracuse. And that was it. That was kind of it. And I remember when I started taking lessons with that teacher really early on, he was like, "Yeah, man, you got the bug. Like you've got the music bug." And I was like, "What do you mean I got the bug? Like there's something wrong with me?" And he's like, "Well, it depends on how you look at it." He's like, "You're hooked. Like you've got that." I mean, addiction is a not a good word, but
I've
you
heard
just
it called the evil gene. Those that
yeah,
have this music gene that, for good or bad, you just cannot escape the pull towards music.
exactly, Joel. That's it. Like I just couldn't escape it. That was it. I was hooked, and I had to do it all the time and keep on like, I don't know, just keep on working at it, keep on getting better, and then I've never stopped, and here I am today, still doing it, still hooked on it. So yeah, that was like my TSN turning point for sure.
And you said that was like 17 or 18 years old.
I was
Like
18. Yeah, I was in grade 12.
that's so wild, because you hear of all these, child prodigies and Tiger Woods at like two, like doing these crazy putts. And it's, for someone to start that late, where, most people learn a bunch of languages when they're kids and learn skills when they're kids. And for you, it's like you came in almost at a disadvantage, and still you're able to pull through and become a professional drummer and do great things. So do you think, to make up for the lost time, you just put in that much work, that many hours, that much dedication and practice?
Yeah, I mean, I had to, because right away kind of set my goals. Like as soon as I started playing, I was like, I got to get in a band, and I was like, I was hopeless on the drums, and I just like asked my teacher, what do I got to do to get good at this? And he's like, well, you could practice an hour a day, and I was like, okay, that's gonna make it. That's all I got to do. And he's like, well, if you're going to do an hour, you might as well do 2 hours. And then the next week, he's like, if you're going to do 2 hours, you might as well do 3 or 4 hours. And I was, man, but like from that year, from 18 to 19, I was right away doing an hour a day to 2 hours a day, up to like 6, 7, 8 hours a day. That's all I did. I kind of like I didn't flunk out of school, but that just became my main thing. I took a year off after high school and practiced for a whole year, and then got accepted to Humber College, which is like a jazz school, a jazz performance school. Got accepted there, and then same thing. That's all we did in school was go to the practice modules and play. It was like a competition between the guys in the drum department, like who could practice the most hours in a day. Just because I felt I had to make up for lost time. Even the guys in my class in first year were all like, this guy was a jazz prodigy in grade 8, and in grade 9 this guy went on tour with the teachers from the university, and I was like, grade 9, I didn't even know that drums existed in grade 9. So I just work until until I got into a band, until I started playing out, and just kept on going from there.
Did you happen to see the movie Whiplash at all?
I saw the movie Whiplash. Yeah. I mean, that's musician life in a nutshell. It's not that extreme. I didn't have teachers that,
made you bleed and cry.
Hurt me. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, there is that type of, if you get serious about any type of art, it becomes obsessive. It becomes extreme. Like if you want to take things to that level of, to push the boundaries and get things to the point where you become professional, you have to, practicing for hours and hours per day, it's quite extreme. Doing that, practicing or doing sports or doing anything for that length of time, it takes that type of intensity, I believe.
I remember when Taylor Hawkins passed away, everyone in the industry was sharing their stories about, how remarkable he is and such a nice guy. And someone had shared a story that I guess they were a part of the movie Whiplash, and they sent the movie an advance copy to Taylor Hawkins to see if they could get a review, like kind of an endorsement. Right. And he ended up sending back not a review, but the movie triggered a story. So he just, instead of a review, there's this huge story that was amazing where he said, I actually had a teacher that was kind of like the guy in Whiplash, and I hated him, and then I ended up loving him, and it's because he saw greatness in me that I didn't see in myself, and he made me go above and beyond who I was. And by the time he was done with that teacher, he did become a great drummer because of the vision. So it's like still to the day where he sent in that story, he's like, I still love and hate that teacher, but he made me who I am today. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Cool.
Yeah. So who would you say back then at 18, 19, 20, who were your biggest influences as far as drummers? Were there already drummers that kind of blew your mind and you aspired to be like them, or maybe emulate their style at the start until you could create your own?
Honestly, I was so behind in like catching up on the music scene and music history. And I just, my mentor and the person that I kind of looked up to and admired was my drum teacher. And, he was a working musician. He played big shows. He played small shows. I would go with him and watch him play. And it's like, every time I went to see him play, whether it was in a dive bar or like a big corporate event, it was a learning experience. And he'd get me up to play with the band and kind of throw me to the wolves whenever he could. And it was just like, and then I'd go home and practice even harder, and then go back to see him again. And then he'd get me up to play with people again, and I'd be jamming again. So he was like my main, like the main drummer that I was aspiring to be, like, not aspiring like the way I want to be like John Bonham or I want to be like Ringo. It was more like, I just want to be like him. Like, I just want to get really good and be pro. That was kind of, it wasn't like, I want to be like the drummer in this band kind of thing. It was more like, how do I just get to the point where I can do this for a living kind of. But then, quickly I got into, bands and started falling in love with drummers. And that's kind of like always been, I have a picture of Ringo right here. Ringo is like my main dude for sure. John Bonham, like those are my early rock and roll, pop rock influences for sure.
And you're a multi-instrumentalist, so you play more than just drums, guitar, ukulele, piano, vocals. At what point did those other instruments come in on top of the drums?
Not till later. When I went to school, they kind of didn't force you, but kind of promoted doing a different instrument, playing a melodic instrument. Like, you should check out piano or guitar. I had an older brother and a younger brother that were guitar players, so I kind of always fiddled around with that. My teacher always told me like you should be able to understand, music from the other side, not just the rhythm side. So I kind of always messed around with stuff. Didn't really get serious about it. On a side note, when I was a kid, like my earliest musical memories or kind of like desires were I always wanted to play piano as a kid. And I remember being really little, my older brother took guitar lessons, and I would just go in the car with my mom to take my brother to guitar lessons. And I always wanted to play piano, but we didn't have a piano. And the answer from my parents was like, we don't have a piano, so you're not playing piano. And I was like, oh, okay. But I really want to. Like, I always had that desire to play piano. And I mean, those dreams got kind of crushed, not in a bad way. And then after that, when I was a little bit older, I always used to beatbox. My older brother, I used to drive him crazy. From no, like, I didn't see someone beatbox. It was just a kind of a stupid thing that I would always do as a kid, like walking around in the neighborhood playing games with friends. I'd always be beatboxing, and it's just funny how that was like from the ages of 5 to 10, and then fast forward like decades later, and I play drums for a living, and I love piano. Piano is one of my I love piano as much or more than the drums sometimes. So it's just kind of funny. Like, I think I had those genes in me, obviously at that age, but I just didn't have I didn't meet the right person. I didn't have the right teacher. I didn't have the right experiences to get me to start doing it at an early age. So, but I mean, I got no regrets. Things happen the way they happen. I had a good childhood without music.
I guess in your parents' defense, maybe their thought was that even if they put you into piano lessons, it's like you would go the 1 day a week, and then you get home, you wouldn't be able to practice anyways. Like it
Totally.
wouldn't add up to anything. So
Yeah. Yeah. And my parents were not, I mean, they listened to music, but they weren't musical. Like, my dad didn't have a guitar hanging around the house. They didn't do sing songs on the weekend. So they just kind of, kind of interesting though.
do you still beatbox to this day, or
I
did you
do.
leave
I
that behind?
beatbox all the time, man. It's my secret, like, songwriting tool. Like, a lot of songwriters will just use their phone and voice memos for getting down ideas. And if I'm by myself or with other people and we're recording something, you don't generally bring your drum kit to a songwriting session. It's usually a bunch of people hanging around on couches. And if there's a drum feel or rhythm that kind of needs to be there to make the idea sit properly, I always beatbox stuff. And it's I just always knew when I started playing, like, if you can kind of sing the beat or like beatbox the beat kind of like in your body, then I can play the drum beat. Like, it's my brain singing the beat to you. So if I can do that, then I can sit down on the kit and kind of mimic what's in my head. So I always thought it was a good thing, to just kind of, when you got a beat, sometimes I'll just record beats. And then later on, when I'm in a writing session, I'll listen and go, oh man, this is cool. And then quickly figure it out on an actual kit. And it's like, wicked. Where'd that come to? Well, it came to me when I was grocery shopping with my kids,
Do you ever beatbox for your kids? I feel like that would be something entertaining that
No,
they get a
absolutely,
kick
man.
out of.
I'm secretly trying to get them addicted to music, working very hard at that secretly. Don't want my wife to know, but yeah, my son's like, I'll be changing his dirty diaper and he'll be like, it's like almost got the rhythm. And I'm like, yeah, keep going. And sometimes my daughter tries to, and I love it.
I've seen pictures of each of your kids near a drum kit. Have they shown a little music inclination already?
Yeah, absolutely. We got them a little baby kit this past Christmas. And yeah, I mean, they've been around it their whole lives, right? I do have guitars lying around, and we have the piano and ukuleles and drums, and they've come to concerts and stuff. So they're definitely interested. I don't think it's like an interest in wanting to do it. It's more of an interest in what are you doing? I want to, oh, you're making noise in that thing. I want to, hit the strings and try to make noise too. So, I mean, that's where it starts, right? I don't think I'll force them to, like, I don't think we'll be the type of parents to say, like, you have to take piano lessons and it's got to be Royal Conservatory and you have to practice every night after school. I don't think we'll ever be like that. I think it's just the exposure will be there for sure. And if my daughter or my son wants to get into guitar, I've got a guitar for them. If they want to get in piano, we have a piano. If they want to get into drums, here's my drum kit, like go for it. I'm all for it. I think it's a great development tool for children, for sure, to have that exposure to music.
And back when you were a kid, before the music dream came to you, later in your teens, as a kid, was there anything you wanted to be growing up before the music bug kicked in?
Yeah, just Michael Jordan. That's all I wanted to be.
Basketball, baby.
Yeah, basketball since like grade 6. Yeah, grade 6 to grade 12, basically. I was just same thing, the same type of commitment I put into music when I started. I would do that with basketball. I would just be on the driveway or at the playground every day, winter, summer, spring, just as much as I could, and just loved it. And I loved, like, I look back on those years as very fond memories, because it was just I think music, like I said, music is a great tool for kids for development, but sports also, I think, are not just watching sports, but participating in sports is a huge thing to make, I don't know, cool people or successful people or people that like are well-rounded.
And do you still have those basketball skills now? Like, are you out on street corners swindling people, playing games, playing some hoops?
I can still shoot. I just play for fun now. Once I played into my 20s and my early 30s, and then I was like, man, it becomes risky. I just don't want to play some, fun pickup game and end up tearing my ACL or something just because I get into it and start getting aggressive. So I just I shoot around for fun.
If I met you at 12 years old, who would I be meeting? What is Chris Gormley like at 12?
12.
Shy kid, outgoing. What are you into?
Outgoing, sports. Like I said, I played soccer, played volleyball, but basketball, like I said, all the time, every day. You'd see me at home, videotaping Chicago Bulls games on Beta. I don't know if anyone knows what that is. Not VHS, before VHS, the small tapes, I guess. Taping games and then going back and watching them after, and then watching Michael Jordan do a move and then going outside and trying to do it on the driveway for the rest of the night. That would be me at 12. But like a fun kid, I don't know. I like to have fun. I had lots of friends, but kind of stuff was mostly geared around sports at that age, for sure.
As a Michael Jackson fan, you must have watched The Last Dance on Netflix that everyone was obsessed with.
Yep.
I'm not even a basketball fan, and I was like obsessed with that. Just greatness, it's being able to see a human being that's capable of things that nobody else is inspires you to be better at whatever your craft is.
Yeah, that was an emotional documentary for me, because when Michael Jordan retired and I kind of drifted away from basketball, I kind of stopped being a fan of the sport. I'm not really a fan of any sports right now, to be honest. And that came out and I was like, oh my God, a story of the guy that I idolized for a huge chunk of and I knew all those stories because I was living at that time and watching this stuff in real time, and watching that, I was like, oh, no wonder I loved this man. Like, what a specimen, what a human. A great guy to have as like I want to be like Mike. Like, that's a cool dude. And he loves cigars, and turns out I love to smoke cigars too. So
he's someone you want on your team, but not someone you want to see across from you on the court.
Totally. A feared man.
Yeah. So we talked about you at 12 years old. As you get older, let's say you're 16 years old, you invite me over to your place, probably, I'm assuming, in Ajax, and you are going to play some albums for me. What music at 16? Or are you not that into music yet? What would you be playing
no,
for me?
So 16, so high school, I moved to Mississauga. So I left Ajax right before high school. And I was in high school right at grade 9 in Mississauga. And that's where I was still heavily into basketball and sports, but that's when my musical kind of experiences started happening. Even though it was kind of peripheral, like I wasn't really interested. I was kind of like, oh, what's going on over here? So a little band from Streetsville called To Each His Own used to rehearse in my basement with my brother, my older brother. He's 3 years older. And he was in a band with 3 of the members from another Streetsville band called Pez, which became Billy Talent. So when I was in grade 10, 11, right before I started playing drums, Aaron, the original drummer from Billy Talent, his drum kit was in my basement. John Glant, the bass player, Ben, the singer, they'd come to my basement, my brother's house, my house, and rehearse once, twice, three times a week. And I'd be on the driveway, literally playing basketball, and I'd see the guys. Hey guys, they'd go downstairs. I'd take a break and go down and watch them. And I was just kind of like, what is this? What's happening? Guys screaming, bass players rocking out, the drummer smashing the drum that's really loud. For some reason, my parents didn't care. Getting just exposed to that like mystical world of rock and roll. Like there was, if my parents weren't home, there'd be guys drinking beers, there'd be guys smoking cigarettes, which is like smoking cigarettes. So they're smoking joints. So I had that kind of happening in my life, not knowing that, I would be entering that world shortly. So at the time I would listen to those guys play and the stuff that they would cover, and they're doing like a Doors cover, or they're doing like a Black Sabbath cover, or like whatever they were kind of into. That became my influences. My older brother, I don't give him credit enough, because he was always a good, he used to listen to Jimi Hendrix. He used to tell me, you should check out Jimi Hendrix. You should check out Led Zeppelin. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't have good headphones back there that I could take out on the driveway and play basketball to, right? So I was like, how would I listen to music while I'm doing the thing that I do all the time? So, but he definitely started to put those bugs into my ear of rock and roll. So, yeah.
It's crazy the success and longevity that Billy Talent's had. I mean, I remember back in, I guess, about 2003 when they exploded, and just recently their album from last year, Crisis of Faith. So every year I do an episode, the best albums of the year. And I had Crisis of Faith as one of the 9 best albums of the year. Despite them being big for 20 years, this is their first album where all 3 singles went to #1 on rock radio. So it's the most success they've ever had on radio with an album at this, all the way through the career. And I love that new album so much. I went out to see them in Ottawa with Rise Against. And cool. My favorite band of all time is Winter Sleep from the East Coast. And their drummer, Lowell Campbell. I look up, and the drummer from my favorite band is playing with Billy Talent. And I was like, this is amazing. So pretty cool moment there. What are some of the jobs you had leading up to the point where you could make enough money as a musician and just do music? Any crappy jobs so that our listeners can relate to you?
Oh man, I used to deliver papers like my whole life, up until I realized that you shouldn't be doing that because it's not cool. I worked in a Chinese restaurant for years. I worked in a grocery store for even longer than that. But right when I kind of like right at 18, but maybe 19, or between that time, right away, my teacher was like, hey man, you know how to do this, and this on drums. Just start teaching people. And I was like, what do you mean teach people? Like, yeah, just teach kids. And I would let, parents know in the neighborhood, that I was playing drums and teaching drums. And right away I started teaching drum lessons out of either my parents' basement, or I'd go to kids' basements and teach kids for half an hour and get paid cash. And I was like, people going to pay me for doing music? And then, by the time I was 19, I was playing gigs in bars. Like my teacher was handing me gigs that he couldn't do. And what kind of jobs I've had. As a musician, you kind of have to do a bunch of things. I think a lot of musicians can relate to this, unless you have really big success and you're making tons of money from your one project. Over the years, I've done so many things, from teaching, playing on cruise ships, taking all kinds of great gigs, all kinds of really terrible gigs that I don't want to talk about. Like, you just kind of do whatever you can to, keep the wheels turning, keep the cash coming into your pocket, sort of thing.
So Neil was asking about the cruise ships. Is there any like horror story, any most memorable thing that happened that you can share? Anything wild? Anything come to you? Maybe you just never want to remember these things again.
No, the cruise ship experience was a good one for me. No, it was just another thing along the way that kind of cemented in my head that, the thing about cruise ships that people may not know is you get paid very well to to go on a cruise ship and to, you know, to be out at sea working.
And you have no expenses, right? Because
Right.
you're living on there. You don't need a car. Yeah.
Exactly. And they supply you with food. There's a gym. It's like, it's kind of a little bit like paradise. This is right after I finished college and I got this gig and I was just gone for 4 months and it was awesome. And I was making lots of money and I was like, wow, it kind of cemented in my head that I could make a living from doing this. You know, like when you're in college, you're just like so young and stupid and thinking like, I'm going to be a professional drummer. Like when people tell me that now, I'm like, well, good luck, man, or good luck, whoever, because it's really difficult. But when I got out of school and I got that gig, I was like, you're going to pay me this much money just to play drums. And then the rest of the time I can suntan and work out and eat as much food as I want. It was a little bit like an eye-opening experience, of a positive one, that I could do this and make money. And then when I came home, when I was back on land, they begged me to stay longer. And I came home and I just started playing with everyone, like jazz gigs, little bar gigs, little coffee shop gigs, rock and roll gigs. I joined a rock band called Snapper, who we used to play with Pez in the Streetsville area for years. Just getting like playing with anyone and make money wherever I can. If they weren't paying me, I didn't care. I just kind of wanted to play as much as possible.
And at what point did Daylight for Deadeyes come into the picture? That's you and your brother that started this band.
Yeah. So right about that time, like my brother also went to Humber and we both just kind of entered the world of, I guess, like a gigging musician where you kind of just take, you know, whatever gig kind of lands on your lap. And we were both playing with other artists or other bands and going, you know, all these people are doing is just learning cover songs and getting paid to play them, or they're writing their own songs and they're getting shows and getting fans. Why don't we just do our own thing? And me and my younger brother were always close and we always kind of flirted with writing music together. So we just said, let's try it. I remember I sold one of my drum kits and bought a PA, and that became our PA for like almost 15 years. We just started a band, learned some songs, started writing some songs, and then started playing in like the Streetsville scene, which became like the Mississauga scene, which became the GTA scene. And then, I mean, we toured the country. We went overseas to the UK and did tours that we set up over there. We put out a lot of albums and, you know, learned a lot about the business and about songwriting and performing and dealing with big crowds and dealing with small crowds, and learned kind of a lot with that band for sure.
So for our listeners that are quite a bit younger, they weren't around back then. How would you describe the music? And you know, after the episode, we'll send them to go check out the music. It's on Spotify. Right. It's available online.
Right. Well, ironically, because you said you were around in 2003 when the Trews first came out, I was also around. Same with the Billy Talent when that record dropped. The Trews and the Billy Talent record both dropped. I think they were both up for like the Juno for like new band of the year or like album of the year or something like that. Billy Talent won. The Trews were a big influence just because I saw them very early on, and they kind of were doing like, you know, just a drummer playing rock drums and guitars, and that was kind of our vibe. Maybe because they had the East Coast thing, me and my brother being like a Scottish background, I think we kind of related. And the sound, like, I wouldn't say it was shaped after them, but it was definitely influenced by, like, you know, rock and roll drums, rock and roll chords, and like big kind of catchy choruses. That's kind of what we tried to do with Daylight for Deadeyes from the beginning. And we had a couple songs that were, you know, did well and had some big choruses and did some damage for us. So it was cool.
So I moved to London, Ontario in 2003, 2004, when I was 18, to go to school for audio engineering. And that's why I remember so clearly that year, because it's the 1 year I'm in London and Billy Talent blows up, the Trews blow up. That's why there's this imprint on me. So I went back, I listened to all the albums from Daylight for Deadeyes, and I have a list of my favorite songs. So I like Darling, You and I Need Love, and Woman. Those are my top four songs from the discography. The debut album was in 2008. That was New York. That's the debut album for the band. Is that right?
Yeah, that was our debut kind of biggest kind of album. Yeah.
Okay. And when you think back to that album, what thoughts, emotions, memories come to you? I mean, that kind of kicked off this amazing adventure you've been on since then.
Yeah, it was just exciting I mean, we were still kind of new to the whole studio recording thing. And we had been kind of writing, a lot since maybe 2004. So we had I mean, a lot of bands will say that your first album is going to end up being one of your best albums because you have all that lead up and all that time to write for that first album. And yeah, I mean, it's funny, the songs that you picked as your favorites, four of them would have been my favorites too, from the whole discography. Yeah, it was just a great, exciting time. And we had a little bit of buzz in the industry. It was a time when a band like the Trews were very successful and we were very Trews-esque. And we had some interest from some record labels, and some of our songs did very well, and some of our songs got picked up. I mean, the main song from that album, the New York song, got picked up from the New York Rangers in New York. And they still use it at MSG to this day. They use it in games. And I've been over there. I know the organist, the guy who plays organ and does the music. And I've been over there and been in the arena with him. And he's like, check this out. And he's played our song. And it's like, and it ended up getting used at the Super Bowl that was in New York because he also worked the Super Bowl. So we had some cool life moments that kind of all stemmed from that album. Darling's been one of our, I mean, I still get requests to play that song when I'm not even when I'm drumming for a random band in a random club. And people play Darling. It's like, I don't even have a microphone. I can't play Darling. So yeah, it was just one of our more successful albums as Daylight for Dead Eyes, for sure.
I was going to ask you, so you released multiple albums between about 2008 and 2013. I was going to ask you what your highlights were with that band, and you just listed quite a few of them. So
yeah. I mean, we developed. It was me and my brother. We had a bass player, and we also met a friend of ours, producer. His name's Carl Jennings, and we kind of developed just a strong little small team. And we knew that if we were at home working on the songs, we could take them to the studio, which is where he was, and he'd make them sound good. And we were just kind of churning out music, trying to do the next thing that could maybe get us to that next level. I mean, we never really got to that level of having radio success and big success as an original band, but we had a lot of minor successes kind of along the way that, definitely led me to where I am in my career now.
So from 2015 to 2018, you drummed for Big Sugar. They had already released multiple gold and platinum albums. Big popular legendary band in Canada. How did that opportunity present itself? I'm a big Big Sugar fan. I had Gordie Johnson on the podcast a few episodes ago, and it was like the highlight of my life. So I'm excited to dive into this part of your life a little bit.
Cool, man. Well, I guess the last little EP we actually did with Gordie Johnson. And
he was producing, or
he produced it. Yeah. So we tracked him down and we opened up for him when he was playing with Wide Mouth Mason. He was playing bass with them for a bit. We opened up for them at the Horseshoe, and I was like, man, I really want to do a record with you, do something with you. What can we do? And he's like, well, talk to my manager. Maybe you can come down to Austin, Texas, which was like, that'd be cool. So we ended up going down to Texas and recorded at Willie Nelson's studio with him producing. And it was like, I would say this is one of the biggest kind of turning points in my musical career, for sure, because not only did the recording go great and those songs turned out great, and it was great for the band, but at the same time, I kind of had an eye-opening experience with him, just kind of personally. He liked my work ethic. I liked his. He liked what I was doing on the drums. I liked the fact that he liked that. You know what I mean? Like I respected him highly, and he was like, "Hey man, I really like what you're doing on the drums." And it got to the point, I think we were there for a week. I think by the third day, I was alone with him, and I was like, "Hey man, what, you like this and you like what I'm doing here? could I play with you guys? Like, do you ever need a dude? You ever need a drummer to like, I didn't know the state of his band. I mean, he's had multiple drummers throughout the career of Big Sugar, and he kind of stopped. I remember he was at the board, mixing with his back to me, and he kind of stopped and turned around and was like, yeah, man, maybe I might need you down the road. You should start checking out the music. And that was like a life, like a moment for me where the light bulbs went off, and I went home from Austin. When I got home right away, and I just, got all their records, which I had at home, ironically, and just started, I'll learn this whole record. And then I text them and be like, hey man, I just learned the first record. And then I learned the next record. Then I learned the next record, all the way up until kind of got caught up. Can I join your band now? And he's like, well, no, we have a drummer, but I'll keep it in mind. And then I went back to work with my own band, and we were, Daylight for Dead Eyes was a hard working, busy band. We were always playing. And I did that for a living, right? So I was busy. And then one day I got a call. I remember it was a Monday, and he's like, hey, this has been 6 months now since I stopped checking out all the music, kind of. And he's like, hey, you still remember all the music? And in my, like, I was like, yeah, but in my head I was like, I don't remember all the music. Like, no, I stopped studying this stuff. And he's like, well, I might need you by Friday. This is Monday. And he's like, here's the list of 40 songs, learn them as best you can. And I was like, there we go, back home again, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day learning all the songs, rehearsed with them. And then went to open up for a little band called AC/DC.
It's good to start small, make sure you really know the song.
Yeah, that was my my introduction to, like, I thought I was living in the rock and roll world, but this is my introduction to the rock and roll world. And I survived that gig. And by survived, I mean, I didn't make any mistakes. I did my job. And then after that, I got the gig, and that was it. I think that was a good audition. And then I was in the band for 3 years, and I was in the band when I came into the band. It was all the original old cats, that, like, Gary Lowe on bass, Mr. Chill, me, Gordy. Like, it was, I was and am a man, but I was playing with kind of real men. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, these are some dudes that have been around, and just eating lunch with those guys was a learning experience for sure. Touring with them was awesome. And Gary, the bass player, who has passed away now, became a good friend. And I traveled with him because he was coming from Toronto with me. So we traveled a lot together, and just the stories, man, and the, guys that have been around for that long doing something that you do kind of at a higher level for a long period of time. It's just always a learning experience with people like that.
And do you think those 3 years playing with that quality of musicianship, do you think that elevated your game to the next level?
Yeah, Gordy is, he's a monster musician, like, and he expects a lot from his drummers. And I loved it. Like a lot of drummers will say that he's hard on drummers. A lot of musicians will say he's hard on people that he has in his band. But I loved it. Like, it was, yeah, man, he wasn't satisfied with pretty good. I mean, and that's kind of a standard I like to keep for myself anyways, but he was like next level. Like, we got to the point where the shows were getting really good and the band was sounding good. And I'd be like, I played a good show tonight. It felt good. And he was still like, yeah, that's pretty good, man. But that third song, that bridge in the third song, you messed up that fill going in. And the last song, it's too fast. You know what I mean? And I'd be like, crushed, because he's the boss, man. He was the leader. But it crushed in a good way, like crushed in a way where it's like, okay, I'm just going to keep working harder. And try to please the boss. That's your job as a hired guy. But I saw it as a bigger picture of, no, this guy's pushing me to get better. So I never took it as a negative. I just took it as, hey, bring it on, man. Tell me what I got to do to become, to go next level. Cause sometimes you need someone being hard on you like that.
So behind me, I have kind of a wall of fame. So these are my 12 favorite albums from guests I've had on the podcast. So
Cool.
you got Big Sugar here, Heated, and
Yep.
I got it up in time for the interview with Gordy Johnson to celebrate the 25th anniversary. That's the tour they're on now for Heated.
Yep.
And when I pointed out, he looks at the cover and he's like, damn, I was handsome back then. It was just a funny moment with him. You mentioned to me, because so we were saying you played with the band from 2015 to 2018. So I look at the discography and there's just one album released in that period and it's right at 2015. So I'm thinking, that album is probably in the can by the time you join.
Right.
And then you mentioned there's actually another album that's never seen the light of day. This is breaking news. Can you share a little bit about this album? That
I don't know if Gordy wants me to share this, but yeah, when I joined, I think it's Calling All the Youth. I think that's the last album that came out in 2015. That, like, when I joined, it was like, learn these 60 songs and this new record. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's what we did a tour for that album when I first joined. Yeah. And then, when I joined, it was kind of like learning all the back catalog, playing. And then maybe, I guess, by 20, like a year and a half in, he found out that I write stuff. He worked with us. He worked with Day After Us. He knows that I write, and we kind of mentioned, like, oh, if you ever have any ideas, let me hear them. And I sent him a bunch of ideas, to no response, like to no reaction, no, like, oh, cool. And then I remember one day, me and my brother sent him some stuff that was, Big Sugar-esque. And I remember him texting me going, oh, I like that. Send me more of those. And then we sent him more. And then next thing you know, we were writing, back and forth, where he was in Austin, I was in Mississauga, sending him voice memos, sending stuff back and forth. And then finally I went down to Texas to his place and stayed there. And he had a studio there. And we wrote and recorded, like, if not a full album, like very close to a full album, like 8, 9, 10 songs. Unfortunately, by the time that was done and kind of getting close to be, he was starting to mix stuff, which is, like, for people who don't know, like the last phase of the recording process. Around that time, kind of, I'm saying this in a bad way, but it was a good opportunity for me. The opportunity to play with the Trews was kind of like happening. I had started bumping into those guys, writing songs with them, jamming with them a bit. And it was like, oh, this is a really good fit. Like, I would really work well with the Trews.
And you are a fan as well of the Trews, right?
I was a fan, and I really liked the music. And though they lived in Hamilton, Gordy lived in Austin, and it was like, and then so around that time, I kind of made the switch and jumped ship and joined the Trews guys. And then me and Gordy kind of fell out a bit. It was a tough decision and a tough thing that kind of had to happen, though. The Trews are a very busy, hardworking band, and I wanted to play a lot, and they live close to me. They live just over here. I'm in Mississauga, there in Hamilton. So it just kind of makes sense. It made sense on a lot of levels, and I made the switch. And then that album, like those Big Sugar recordings, have never seen the light of day yet. I don't know what he's got. I've seen them on this Heated tour, and I saw the 3-piece, and they sound great. He's got a couple of young cats in the band that
got Gary's son on bass, right?
Yeah, and they're sounding pretty tight, pretty hot, to be honest. Like, I saw it and I was like, sounds badass. Yeah. So he's always up to something, man. I'm sure he's either got some new music coming out, or maybe he's going to use the old stuff, or maybe he scrapped it. It's what happens in the music biz, right? I write with a lot of people, and if it ever comes out, it'll be cool. If it doesn't, wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, I caught them in Ottawa at the Bronson Center when they were here a few months ago, and it was awesome. So one final thing with Big Sugar, we'll move into the Trews. Yep. Gordy produced the debut album, the gold-selling album from the Trews, House of Ill Fame. So just to show how everything ties together, right? Everything is tied together in the Canadian music industry. There's another example of that. So with the Trews, I saw a picture of you all the way from 2011. So it was you at Big Bucks in Burlington.
Yeah.
You with I think it was Colin with at least one of the members. So you go all the way that far back. So you were a fan back in like 2003, and then by 2011 you were at least on the same bill as the Trews.
Yeah, not I don't think we were friends at that point. We started getting some opening slots for them, which was cool, which like I said, we were trying to kind of capture that kind of sound. So I think we were a good opener for them. And we did a couple shows, but even back at that point, I never thought like, hey man, I'm going to be your drummer one day. Like it wasn't not that I wouldn't have wanted to. I was focused on my own project. And I think Daylight for Dead still had a goal of like, I don't know, I was going to say making it. I don't know what making it means, like taking that band to the next level. So I wasn't focused on playing with other people. I was more just like, I'm going to do Daylight for Dead and do it till the day I die kind of thing. But yeah, it's ironic how, yeah, it's the Big Sugar, Trews, Gordy, those guys, the weird connection I've had. I mean, I've had Gordy's albums. Like I said, my brother had them in my house since before I played music. And sometimes he'd play them and I'd be like, who's this guy? This blues guy playing like jazzy blues stuff. I was like, this is cool, man. And then it was a trip to like fast forward and be playing that stuff with them and going, I remember the Heated album. I remember listening to this before I played drums. Like, I mean, it's pretty trippy. And then with the Trews guys now going back and playing, I mean, some of their biggest hits are from that record, and we play them every night. Tired of Waiting, Not Ready to Go. And it's like, he was part of that production. And like, it's a weird, I find that's the way the kind of the music business is though. Like it's a huge business, but it's kind of, there's little things that kind of link everyone together in strange ways.
My dad is a big blues and rock fan, and I was 12 when Heated came out, and I remember my dad cranking those tunes. So when I was interviewing Gordy, it was like, holy shit, this is so crazy. Like to think, when you're 12, how you would never think you'd be sitting down with that person all these years later. Where did the opportunity to play drums for the Trews come from? It sounds like you were connected with them over the years through different opportunities, but at what did you have to audition? Did they just say, hey, you're our dude if this is what you want?
I mean, they went through something they had their original drummer for many years, like maybe 15 years. And they went through something where he was no longer the drummer and they quickly got someone to fill the role. I don't know the details about that. I don't know if that guy if they ever thought like, oh, he's the guy that we're going to keep forever kind of thing. So when I started hanging out with them, bumping into them in Hamilton, we started writing together. And writing, I find writing with different artists, it can be like a very business type kind of hangout, or it can be like a very personal thing. And with those guys, like we connected a lot. It was me with them, and my brother was on the writing sessions too. And like we really connected. And it was like, it quickly went from writing to like, well, let's record this quickly in the basement, and which quickly came to like, we should get this down in the studio. And then next thing you know, I wasn't playing with them per se, like I wasn't playing shows with them, but I'm on a couple of recordings. Like it started to get weird quickly, like in a good way. And then you listen to the tracks and it's like, well, this band, this sounds cool. This vibe that the band plus this guy is kind of making sounds right. So then it just became, hey, do you want to do a show? Like, I think I did a little acoustic show with them, maybe kind of on the slide, like maybe the drummer, I mean, these things happen. I don't feel good about stealing the guy's gig, but it happened. I might've done one acoustic show and that went well. And then it was like, we did one, I think they told him that we're going to do one show to see how it feels with this guy. And the show went great. And then the rest is kind of history. It's like when it works, it's like a relationship, right? Like, I mean, it happens in the real world all the time. The non-musical world, like you might be dating someone and you're like, oh, I like them, they're great. But then you meet someone that you like better. And it's like, well, I'm going to stop liking you and I'm going to like this person more. Like
there's good, but I want great. So
yeah. So the connection was great. And we've kind of always had that since from then until now, as far as writing and performing live, it's like, it's a no-brainer. Like I'm there, they're there. It's like, we connect. Let's do it. Let's try to make some magic.
So I have some kind words here from someone that was a part of the Trews camp at one point. This is from Dan Preston, who is an amazing guitarist for Clark Nova, but was also the tour manager and front of house for the Trews. Dan says, Chris is a wonderful dude, multi-talented, true lover of music, and multiple whiskeys too, LOL. One very respected thing of artists and bands when you're a tour manager is when artists don't overcomplicate things. Chris is a straight shooter and knows how this all works very well. Working with him is extremely easy. In the pocket, solid drummer, and musician overall. And at the end of the day, a super swell hang. Lots of respect there. Wish him nothing but the best. That's from Dan Preston.
Interesting, man. Very nice. I got some friends out there.
It's good to have friends.
Yeah. He said some interesting things there that I always kind of try to pass on to young, like up and coming drummers or musicians. Like, I think being a solid person and being a good hang and being kind of professional is what people are after in the industry, as opposed to like, oh man, this guy's the best drummer. Like, you got to see how fast he can play, or this guy wails on guitar. Like, I think people are more interested in, is the guy straight up and normal dude? Is he professional? Can he show up on time and get the job done? And that's kind of what's kept me working in the industry. I mean, yeah, I think I'm a good drummer. Like, I work very hard at my craft, but I'm not like, I don't think I get hired because I have the fastest feet and the fastest hands in the business. That's not something I aspire to have. I think I get hired consistently because, like Dan said, I'm a straight up dude, and I'm hardworking, and I try to always get the job done. So.
Yeah, so he's out on tour with Saint Sonia, and he'll be in Ottawa soon. So I hope to see him there. I have a fan question sent in. So this is from Sandra McInnes, and her question is, what was your biggest challenge joining an established band, or did it make it easier since they're so well seasoned and experienced? So she's asking about the Trews.
I mean, it's always the challenge when you're hired and the band's been around for a long time. The challenge is always the back catalog, right? I mean, they had, I don't remember how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 or 6 albums before I joined. Is that, I don't know, you might know better than me, but yeah, a lot of songs. And, at first, when you have time to learn all that stuff, you get all the material and you get familiar with it, but then you start playing the shows and you only play, these 20 to 30 kind of songs. But then some shows or some tours, in soundcheck, they'll be like, oh, do you know blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, what's that? It's like a song I might have learned 5 years ago once, but no, I don't know it. Like, oh, we're playing that tonight. And then it's like, okay, you got to get the headphones back on and the practice pad out and like figure that stuff out quick, and then try to pull it off and make it sound like you've been playing it for 20 years, which you haven't, right? So that's a challenge, but for the most part, I mean, she kind of answered her own question. Yeah, playing with guys that have been doing it for a long time, as long as you do your job, working with guys like that can do their job really well, it just kind of, it's not as hard as to make it kind of work. It's not as hard as you think.
And did you feel a lot of pressure joining a band that already had multiple gold albums, gold and platinum singles? Did you feel pressure, or more than anything, were you excited knowing you were the right man for the job?
Yeah, I felt I was the right fit for the job. No, I don't feel pressure like that. Like, I mean, do I get nervous for shows sometimes? Yeah, I think every performer does, but no, I thought it was kind of I wouldn't say meant to be, but like when we started hanging out together and writing together, I was like, I think I'm going to become the drummer for this band. Like, I think it's what should happen if the universe is right, and if my crazy brain is right. And turns out I was right. I think it was the right call for them to choose me and for me to go play with them for sure.
To show how popular the Trews were back in 2003, 2004, I saw the Trews probably 10 times live in a period of a few months, because I would go see the Trews because I was a fan. And then I would go see Matt Mays because I was a fan and they were opening for the Trews. And then I'd go see Sam Roberts and the Trews were opening for Sam Roberts. And I'd go to a festival and all three of those artists were on the bill. So it was like this whole collection of amazing artists that were kind of sticking together while touring. So I've just seen them so many times. And then even when I moved back to Ottawa, they came here and they came back here to Ottawa and they played at Algonquin College. And one thing that I love about the Trews is these guys are road warriors. Like they're always touring. And when you see other bands that only have, like, they're only going to do Montreal and Toronto and Vancouver, the Trews will go anywhere that fans are willing to show up. So they're doing the big cities you'd expect, but they're hitting Peterborough, they're hitting Kingston, they're hitting... Yeah. They're willing to go anywhere where the fans are, even if it's not a traditional big city, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. Oh man, I just had a good point. I just lost it.
That's all good, man. If you remember, you can bring it up. But so I'm familiar with the whole Trews discography as a fan over the years, but I wanted to dive into the 2 albums that you've been a part of. Is that okay with you? We can dive in.
Yep.
Man, I got notes on different songs and everything. So we have Civilianaires 2018 and we have Wanderer 2021. So Civilianaires, 4 singles, The New Us, Vintage Love, Bar Star, and Time Speeding Up. What was it like hearing your music with the Trews on radio for the first time?
I mean, that was cool. Like, for sure. I didn't have that type of radio success with my own band. So when Vintage Love came out, there's me playing drums on the radio, and it was great. And that was a kind of a strange, that was kind of right when I joined the band. I think they were like about to go in the studio and lay down tracks, and they didn't know what to do. Like, it was going to be me or it was going to be the other guy. And they finally said, like, I remember John Angus calling me on the phone. I was driving home one night and he's like, "Hey man, do you want to drum on the Trews record? I'm going to send you all the tracks right now." I had co-written a couple songs on that record, but the rest of them were just, their songs that I was like, "Oh, these sound cool. I gotta get these drum parts down." Went in 2 or 3 days and kind of did all the drums. And then, with a big band, a big machine behind, like a band like the Trews, next thing you know, the album's out and there it is. And it was definitely a cool experience. And something I was really proud of to I mean, unfortunately in the Big Sugar situation, I never got to be part of an album that came out and got some airplay, and you know what I mean? So this was kind of the first time with them, and it was cool for sure. Yeah. And some of those tracks from Civilianaires we play every night. So
yeah. So my favorite songs on the album are Leave It Alone, Harder to Love, Up Sweet Baby, and No More Saying Goodbye. So those are my 4 favorites.
Awesome.
Not all of them are singles, so there's some deeper cuts on there. When you think back to the recording of that first album with them, is there anything that stands out? Any memories from being in the studio? Any challenges? Anything awesome that happened? Anything funny? Just anything that comes to you now about the recording of that album? Because the new album was during the pandemic, so there's lots to talk about. So I'm curious about this one.
Up Sweet Baby. Funny you mentioned that, because that was that came from the early writing sessions when I started writing with them before I joined the band, and that was kind of like I think that was a little bit of a TSN turning point for those guys and myself when we wrote that. I remember we quickly made a recording in the basement. John Angus has some setup he can record stuff, and I played his son's, who was very young at the time. This is a while ago. His little kid drum kit. Like, I was bent over like this playing a little drum kit. And the actual drum sound from that little crappy little kid kit kind of ended up staying on that recording. But that was like a turning point for everyone, where I thought everyone was kind of like, "Oh, this song's cool." And we came up with this together, and he's drumming it and we're here, and maybe this should become a thing. And ended up being on the record. And that was one for sure. That was kind of stands out. But no, I loved the recording process for that album. And then we did a big Canadian tour for that album and played the hell out of those songs. And some of those ones that you mentioned, you have good picks for
Well,
for
thank you. Thank you. I should be like a radio a guy, you know, choosing the hit singles or the
Yeah, because
A&R or something.
those are the ones that the ones you mentioned. Those are the ones that we played a lot and still kind of play now. So
So my notes for Up Sweet Baby, I have great chorus, such a fun and catchy, uplifting chorus. I think it might be one of the best choruses on the whole album. Do you agree, sir?
yeah, I loved that song, and I remember being in the basement that day when we wrote that, and we were all kind of like, I mean, when you're writing stuff with people, I think everyone in the room has that feeling of like, up sweet baby, this is really good. Oh my God, this is making me feel happy. Like, when something's kind of cool and when something's, really badass. And I think we all had that feeling of, this is good, man. We're on the path to something happening here.
The chorus had such a good payoff. Like when it hits, you're like, ooh, that's it right there.
Yeah. And Colin, I mean, he always delivers vocally, but when he's singing something kind of like had the feel of that song, he just kind of knocked it out of the park. So yeah.
So listening to the album Civilianaires as a whole, the drums are a big part of the sound. Like they didn't relegate you to the back, barely, keeping time. It's your drums are very active throughout. And did it mean a lot to you that they had enough faith in you that it feels to me that they just said, do what you do and went with it instead of saying just, this is your first album with us. Like maybe hold yourself back a little bit and don't take over. It felt like there was a confidence in you that they had to let you do what you were doing. And the drums are, to me, one of the best parts of that album is the drums delivering something more upfront than a lot of drummers.
Well, I won't take credit for credit that is not owed to me. The producer, before I joined the band, the producer, Derek Hoffman, he actually programmed.
Oh, I know Derek. He was on Canadian Idol the year I was on Canadian Idol. I don't know if he wants people to know that, but there you go.
He programmed a lot of those parts. So when I was like going into the studio to learn to record, it was like, here's the songs with the written programmed drum parts, be able to play them perfectly. So it was more of like, learn this stuff and then get in there and play the hell out of it. So I can't take credit for all the drum parts. But still a difficult task, right? For any drummers that play acoustic drums to learn electronic drum parts and make them sound cool and live. It's a tough challenge to kind of bring that to life. So the sound that you're hearing is like real acoustic drums mixed in with electronic drum parts to make them sound really punchy. Yeah, the drums, as they say, they slap on that album for sure.
I love that you mentioned that because it tells me I'm not crazy, because I have a note that says there's an electronic sound to the drums. Did you play drums and then the sound was manipulated afterwards, or are you using loops and programming? So
there you go, man. You got a good
I'm not
ear.
Crazy, sir. The insane amount of money my parents spent for 1 year of audio engineering has paid off just to hear these sounds,
Yeah.
So that first album, your first album with the Trews, goes on to get nominated for a Juno for Rock Album of the Year. What does that nomination mean to you? That Canada's Grammys, the country in which you grew up in, acknowledges your hard work and your talent?
Yeah, I mean, it was just a cool experience, to get acknowledged as a group, as a band, as a kind of a team. And it was exciting. We were on touring the album. I remember halfway through the tour, the nominations came out and we were, freaking out, going to the Junos. I mean, those guys have done it a bunch of times, I think.
It's like their 7th Juno nomination or something.
Yeah. So I got to go and brought my wife, and yeah, it was awesome. And then getting to be there and sitting amongst all the bands that you kind of grew up listening to on the radio. Like, it was a kind of a surreal experience. We didn't win. I think the Arkells won for Rock Album of the Year that year, 2018. I think they win every year. Yeah, but their record was badass. But I mean, I didn't care. I had a great time, and going to the after parties, like the industry parties after, and jam sessions, and like, oh yeah, getting all dressed up, walking the red carpet. It was a cool experience for sure.
I was at the Junos once, and I turned around. I turned into a room, and there was just Neil Young and I turned into him. So I didn't even have a chance to like muster up courage. I just was thrust into the greatness of Neil Young. And I don't know if I've ever recovered from that one, but anyways.
I was on the red carpet, and my outfit, man, for the red carpet was badass, I must admit. And I remember I bought this little dinky jacket that cost like so expensive, because I was like, oh, how often do you get to walk on the red carpet and get photos taken? Anyways, I was walking down, and you're kind of walking, and you get pulled in, you get interviewed, you walk again, you take some photos, you keep on going, and then some guy taps him on the shoulder, and he's like, I just turn, he's like, hey man, that's a sweet jacket. And it was Maestro Fresh West, and I was like, man, I used to listen to you like in, like before height, like grade 8. I used to listen
Backbone Slide, let your backbone slide.
Like, I was in my head, I was like, you have no idea how much this makes me feel. Like, thank you very much for that compliment. So,
and you also know, of all the people that could have said it, he's someone with style that it's actually worth something.
Totally. I was like, I chose the right jacket for sure.
Yeah, if it's someone that has just the worst style ever, like they're wearing just a stupid outfit and they tell you your outfit looks good, you're like, oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I want this compliment. So there's a few more songs on the album I'd love to dive into. So the song Vintage Love, there's some I'm hearing claps in the song.
Yep.
And I love a good clap sound. I'm curious, are those program claps or are they recorded claps? And if they're recorded claps, any tips on how to get a good recorded sounding clap? Is it a group clapping? I don't know how this
that's a electronic sounding clap. I don't think they were in the room making that sound, but yeah, it's such a great sound that I have it on my SPDX. I bring that when we play live, so I get that actual clap sound when we play live, just because
you hit and it triggers that sound.
Yeah, just because it's so distinct for the song. It's kind of, you can't really get that from hitting a cross stick or the hi-hat or anything, so you kind of have to have that. But yeah, that one like, I think, and that one was I think the first single from that album. I don't know, you might know better than me, but
I think it's the second single, but yeah, right up there.
Right. A big part of that song was the drum sound, for sure, because they just like it's a awesome vocal part and melody and everything, but the drums are like, wow, man. I remember hearing that on the radio going like, those drums sound sick, for sure.
The song Harder to Love has such an amazing groove to it. Do you remember the first time you guys locked in with that groove as a band? Maybe some songs, maybe that song was first written on an acoustic and there was no groove until everyone got together. Do you remember where that groove coming together at all?
Yeah, no, I just remember that being like when the record was like, what happens when you're gearing up to record a record is everyone's getting their parts down and you kind of get really good at your parts, right? You finish recording, you go away from the studio, and you don't think about the songs for a long time until the record actually comes out. And then it's like, hey, we're going on tour and we're playing these 12 or 13 songs. And I remember, like some of the songs off that record, we really had to kind of like woodshed them as a band together to make them feel like they sound so great on record. When you hit play, it's like, oh, what a vibe you have, especially that one, Harder to Love. But then when you start playing them, like, you have to now, the humans in the room have to make that recorded awesome production sound good as the Trews doing it, like live, you know what I mean? So some of them were natural, but some of them were harder than others. Harder to Love was one that was like, we'd play it and be like, oh, it's not, what's like, a lot of the stuff I think from Civilianaires was sounded like badass, but really broken down was simple parts put together, but kind of everyone has to play their part for it to sound really badass. You know what I mean? Like, I just play my drum part, you just play that bass part, you just play that guitar part, and you just do the vocal part. But when we all play it together, it's like, it sounds big and huge and kind of fat and badass. So that was I think a little bit of a learning. I'm not meaning to stress this too much, but I think it was a little bit of a learning curve for everyone as a band to make it like, bring those studio productions to life on the live stage.
The song Is It Too Late is more of a slow burner. Chris, are you also a sucker for a good ballad? Tell me this.
I have nothing wrong with good ballads. I'm not on that song though. That was one. There's, I think, 2 songs on that record that I didn't play drums on. It was the previous drummer. I think it's that one and Jericho. which
That's
is the
right at the end of the album.
very last song. Yeah. So that's not me on drums. Interesting pick again. Yeah, I love a good ballad. We played that right when the record first came out, and then we stopped playing it. I don't know why songs get played a lot, or why songs get stopped getting played. But yeah, for no reason. I don't have much to say about that song, just because I wasn't part of the recording process on that one.
All right, I got two more songs on the album, and then we'll move on to the next one, Wanderer. So No More Saying Goodbye. This has a killer dance groove. My question is, when you play that one live, do people start to cut a rug? Does it get the people going on the dance floor?
Yeah, it definitely has a this kind of head bopping kind of vibe. Yeah, when we were really playing that a lot, right when the record came out, it was a good one for us. It also works really well acoustically. Ironically, like kind of without the drums, I kind of play like just like a hand drum, getting like the four on the floor with the bass drum kind of thing. Yeah, it's just one of those ones that ended up sounding like quite poppy in my mind when it came out. I was like, this is like a pop song, like a rock song disguised as a pop song. Yeah, that's just that's just good. I didn't write that with those guys. That's just good songwriting, I think.
So there's a really cool bass groove. It's really locked in with the drums. How important is it for the bass player and the drummer to really lock in that rhythm section underneath everything else?
I think it's huge. And I've had some serious dudes that I've been fortunate enough to play with, like Gary Lowe when I was in Big Sugar, was a monster bass player, and Jack in the Trews. Like, we never really had like a butting heads kind of vibe musically. Me and Jack, we've always he's done his thing and my thing has complimented him, or his has complimented mine. We've kind of always it's always worked kind of naturally. And I think that's a fortunate thing. I think some bands battle that, where the bass player is too busy or the drummer is too busy. And it's just like, you never really get, there's a simplicity to that type of thing between drums and bass. It's got to work. If it's not working, there's some inherent problems with the band that people can't really point their finger to. They're like, something about that band that's off. And it's usually the drummer and the bass player are not happening together. So with Jack and I, it's never been something we had to discuss. It wasn't like, hey man, you should really pull back a little bit and I'll pull up a little bit so we can meet halfway. It's never been a thing. It's just kind of, I listen to him, he listens to me, and we just kind of make it sound like it's like happening. Like that's the goal. So yeah.
Now, I wouldn't be doing my job here if I didn't get some kind words from Jack Siporek, the bass player for the Trews. So Jack says, I love Chris. He's a great collaborator. He's got a positive attitude, and he's a good hang. He hunts some good whiskey too. Oh, and he also plays drums. LOL. Great drummer. So that's from Jack. Short and sweet.
Very nice. Very nice, man. I got some nice friends out there.
You have at least 5 friends, so that's good.
There's more? I was going to say 3.
3? I don't know. There might be. I don't want to let you down if there aren't more, but there might be. So one more song. Amen. Amen. So acoustic guitars sound great. You're playing percussion. What are you playing? Is it bongos, djembe? What is going on here?
I'm playing a djembe. I think it's this djembe that's right here, actually. Yeah, that was kind of the last.
Very tasty, very subtle, tasty.
Yeah, that's the last song we recorded for the record. I think the whole record was done, and then they had this little acoustic number, and they didn't really know what to do with it. And we were in the studio. It was one of the last days for drums, anyways. And they were like, "Well, what are we gonna do with this?" And I brought my djembe in, and I've used this on lots of recordings, and it's been on lots of writing sessions, and just a simple part. And I love playing like hand drums. I think it's the equivalent to like a guy like John Angus playing acoustic guitar. It's like a drummer who plays drum kit playing like a djembe. It's very like acoustic vibey. And yeah, that song just kind of led itself to being on a djembe for sure. And
so let's dive into the newest album. So Wanderer 2021, 3 singles. I Want to Play, The Wanderer, and Permission. What were the challenges of recording during the pandemic. So I guess not just recording, but writing, recording, releasing an album during the pandemic.
Yeah, I'm going to segue for 1 second. Back to that thing I forgot that I was going to say.
You got it back to you?
Yeah. Well, you were saying that you like the fact that the Trews were road warriors and they played everywhere. The funny thing about the pandemic, like when, I mean, the Trews were definitely sidelined over the pandemic, but I think we were also still one of the busiest bands over the pandemic because we whenever there was a hole, whenever there was things opening up, we would go fly here, play here, do this. So when the pandemic kind of started ending and we started bumping into bands on the road, and they were like, "Oh man, how does it feel to be doing your first show in 3 years?" And we were like, "We've done like a shitload of shows. Like we kind of the Trews don't stop working." And the pandemic definitely slowed everything down, huge, but we still managed to do a lot of things. And one of those being recording a record. So we were very busy.
Yeah, I think, over the last 20 years, I don't know if there's any band that's played more shows than the Trews over a 20-year period. What do you think? I'd stack the Trews up against anyone here.
Yeah, they're definitely, I mean, and that was definitely part of the attraction to me joining them. I was like, I had just got married and just moved and got a huge mortgage. And I was like, okay, I need to be working a lot. And they were like, "Hey, want to join our camp and play all the time?" And I was like, "Yes, definitely. Let's do this." Back to the record, the challenges recording a record over the pandemic. Yeah, that was a huge thing. We actually started in Nashville, and we recorded 3 tracks in Nashville with the guitar player from the Black Crows. So that would have been December 2019, and the plan was to go back in 2020 and finish recording with him. And then obviously that wasn't going to be the case. So then we ended up doing 3 more tracks with Derek Hoffman, and then we ended up finishing the record with Eric Ratz. So it was a bit of a mishmash of producers and production. But yeah, I mean, everyone was just happy to be doing something when we kind of technically couldn't be doing things. And whenever there was an opening, we were busy writing, busy in the studio, and got the record out. And there's some slappers on that record for sure. Like there's some stuff that we're really proud of and some stuff that we play all the time. So
do you have a favorite part of the recording process? So some people, their favorite is the songwriting at the start, creating something from nothing. Some people, it's fleshing those songs out with other musicians to see kind of the final product of at least playing it live. Some people like being in the studio, laying down their tracks. Some it's the mixing, some it's receiving the final product. What is there a part that you love the most about being in the studio or recording an album?
I think the part I like best is the creative process, like the pre-production part where you're kind of just making up the idea and it kind of turns in from a little 1-line nugget, and all of a sudden like, oh, he played the drum part, and and he sang this backup, and the next thing you know, you're like, oh, we just wrote 2 verses, a chorus, and a bridge, and it's like it just came out of nowhere. It's kind of like a magical moment. That's the part I love the best. I mean, I remember "I Want to Play," which became a great song from that record. I remember we did a writing session, like a small, like a low-key acoustic-y session at John Angus's house. And if the session was like a 4-hour session, that we were like 3 hours and 45 minutes into it and about to kind of pack it up. And someone played something kind of silly, and I played something kind of silly on the snare drum, like a train kind of beat on the snare drum. And then we all kind of looked at each other like, oh, that's interesting. And then it was like, like kids, like do it again. Let's do it again because it's fun. Like, and then it became "I Want to Play." Like 5 minutes later, we had the whole song kind of sketched out, like maybe 7 minutes. Like in those types of moments, that's my favorite part about the creative process. Sorry, it's like catching lightning in a bottle. Like you work for 4 hours to try to come up with something cool, and then when you're about to leave, someone does something stupid. You react to it. He reacts to it, and next thing you know, you have one of your best songs kind of sketched out. It's like that's what it's all about for me. I live for those moments.
It's like you guys were the medium through which infinite intelligence or the source or God, rain down this idea through you. It's like it had to get out, and you guys were the ones with your stick on the ice ready for it,
Yeah.
to receive it.
It really makes you, it really gets kind of trippy for me. Like it really makes you think about um the writing process, because like sometimes you have to write, like it's like we need to get together, we need to write more songs, but it's like it's almost like the songs kind of play with you, and it's like, yeah, you go do your session and you go work hard at trying to write, but the song is only going to present itself to you when it kind of wants to. So I think it's kind of funny when, yeah, those ones, I think I don't think any individual can take credit for those ones. I think it's like the universe saying, okay, you worked hard enough on your kind of waste of time writing sessions. Now here's a golden nugget. There you go, take it and see what you can do with it, kind of thing.
So my favorite songs on the album are I Wanna Play, which we're talking about, Song to Future Me, and Can't Control Myself. Those are my three favorites. To dive in, there's about 5 or 6 songs I'd love to dive into here. So we might as well stick with I Wanna Play. I think that's the best song on the album. I think it might be the best song on both of the albums combined. The pre-chorus is so good. Like that's such a good pre-chorus. And in the chorus is this big uplifting sing along. To me, out of all the songs on both albums, I think there's like 13 songs on each album. So out of the 26 songs, to me, that one instantly, first time I heard it, that sounds most like a hit of any song on both albums. To me, it just sounds like a radio hit. And the numbers on Spotify back me up. It is the most played song from both albums combined, over 500,000 spins. I think it's 542,000 plays. Why do you think people love that song so much?
For all the things that you just said, I mean, I think it does have a cool drum beat, which is kind of important for a hit song. It's got the huge, catchy sing-along chorus, which is hugely important. And then, like you said, the verse pre-chorus kind of sequence of it, the prose of it, it kind of just, once it starts, it kind of leads you into the big delivery of the chorus and just kind of keeps on doing that over and over again. Yeah, we kind of all knew like that. Like I said, that day when we wrote that, we were like, ooh, this is something. You kind of know when ones are, like I said, songs are good, or they're like got that extra little bit of, I don't know, pixie dust on them kind of. And that one all the way through, like even once we took it to the studio, everyone paid a little bit more attention on making that one sound great, because it was like, there's something special here. And that's an every night, every set kind of song that we play for sure. That's one of the big ones.
So with the lyrics talking about the pandemic, it feels like it's kind of become a little bit of an anthem during the pandemic. Once you were able to get out and play shows, what has the reaction been like to that song?
It's a little bit, I mean, I was going to say celebratory. I mean, the lyrics are, I want to play, I want to celebrate. It just got that relief kind of chorus. You know what I mean? For me, it's like, I want to play, I want to celebrate. Like, it's like, I want to sing along to that. I mean, I do sing along to it. I'm singing backups when we're playing that. But if I was out watching, the band and I was removed from the situation, I would be singing along to that one. It's got almost like a gospel-y church kind of like, oh, I want to celebrate, like a rejoice. That we're coming out of the pandemic and rock music is alive and well. I think that's why people react to that one.
So you mentioned that you sing backups on that song. You sing backups on a lot of the songs when you play live with the Trews. Does hearing and singing backups come easy to you? So just because you're a good singer doesn't necessarily mean you have an ear to hear the backups and the pitch to sing the harmonies. Is that something that comes easy to you, or is it something you work on just like you practice your drum chops?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it comes easy to me, but I mean, I guess in my own band for many years, I was the lead singer. So I wasn't a guy that was kind of chasing, really intricate harmonies. That would have been my brother. But the good thing about the Trews is they've got, their 3 core, the lead singer and the two backup singers that do all the more difficult harmonies. So mine are just more gang, screaming harmonies. A lot of times I'll cause Colin sings like up there. I'll sing his register lower to beef up the chorus. You know what I mean? Like I'm not singing anything crazy on harmonies. It's just to add more beef kind of from the back of the stage.
What has the reception been like so far for that album from critics, from fans? Are you hearing good things back?
Yeah, people love. They have a devoted group of followers that love everything they put out for sure. But I mean, the reaction has been good. We've been playing a lot of the songs. They're always going over live, and yeah, nothing but positive feedback for sure.
So the song "Where Do You Go," I believe that's the first song on the album. It sounds like it's in a different time signature. I don't know if it's in like 7/4 or something, or it changes. Is it more difficult for you to play drums in a different time signature, or is it all the same?
Um, like if you think about it, it becomes difficult. Like
Just
try
don't
not to.
think, just feel, just close your eyes and
Yeah, I
feel.
try not to think about it because then you start thinking like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What the hell's happening? That was another one that was written around that same time as I Want to Play, and I remember I had that. I mean, I don't think like that musically, but I remember I had that drum beat in my head, and I was like, guys, I have this weird drum beat, and I remember John Angus looking at me like, "What the hell is that?" And I was like, "I don't know." And then he made up the riff, and we kind of just went back and forth with it. And the next thing you know, Colin had an idea, but I think his idea was not in 7. And by the way, we're not technical like this. Like we don't think like let's write something in 7 so it can be really difficult. We're not that. They're not that type of band. That's just the idea that I was singing like in my head when I was driving to Hamilton. I started playing the beat. He made up a riff. Colin's like, I have a song, but it's not in that time signature. And we were like, just sing it anyways. And it like he was singing it and trying to catch where the beat was flipping and stuff. But it was another one of those things where it kind of worked, and it sounded like a weird Led Zeppelin kind of tune. Like it just sounded a little bit twisted but cool, and kind of went with it. And then yeah, that's been a one that we've been throwing to live sets. I mean, odd meters and stuff like that. The Trews are not that type of band. I think sometimes people might get confused when they hear stuff like that. Like you see people in the audience going, like, you know. But like I said, with those guys, I think at the core of things, it's always like make the song good and make it enjoyable and kind of likable. So that kind of carries over, even though it's a weird time signature. I think at the end of it, you get, yeah, I like this. I don't know what's happening, but I like this vibe that they're creating.
So I was listening to that song, going for long walks. So over a few days, I was listening to both albums. So I'm walking and I'm counting it, and I'm like, okay, this isn't 4/4, and for me it was a difficult 7/4 to count. Like it's there's something about it where it's sometimes 7/4 is like just very clean. You can hear like it's 4 then 3. That one there's something tricky about it that you're doing there.
It's 7/8, so it's the thing that's tricky about it. It's quicker. It's not like a
Okay.
long 7/4. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I only hear it as boom, bounce, boom, the boom, the boom, 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 the boom, 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 the boom, the boom, boom, boom. So once
Okay,
you,
if I start thinking like that, maybe that would be easier.
yeah, once you get the kind of the melody in your head, then it stops becoming like a tricky thing, and it becomes okay. How do I make this feel good? It's just a drum feel, or it's just a riff. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's still challenging. When we first recorded, I was sometimes you catch yourself in the studio going like, "What the hell is happening? What's my foot supposed to be doing right now?" But yeah, you get used to it over time.
So there's a great guitar riff, a great guitar solo in that song. How talented is guitarist John Angus MacDonald?
Oh, those guys are all great. The three main dudes are great, and I mean they're the type of type of musicians I want to play with, but the type of songwriters that I want to write with, because it's like that song was a perfect example. I was like, hey man, I got this really weird beat, and John Angus is like, okay, what is it? I played it, and then I kind of it's got to be something like Zeppelin-y, and he's like, okay, like what, like brown brown, like you know what I mean? We kind of get each other, like our musical languages are kind of synced up. So it's great to work with guys at that kind of level, because I'm sure there's other people. I mean, I write with other people that it's not like that. Like it's like, hey, you've got to play something like this, and they're like, I don't know what you mean. I can't deliver that right now. You know what I mean? And those guys, if you tell Colin like, oh man, you should sing something like this, he'll be like, oh, like this, and he'll do it way better than whatever you imagine. You know what I mean? And Jack always comes up with his parts easily. Like it's kind of effortless, and that's what you want in the songwriting. But in the songwriting room, you don't want guys that are like struggling to like, I don't know what I would play in this circumstance. You want guys that are they're going to do this kind of quickly. So it's cool to have guys at that level for sure.
The song "The Wanderer" has such a powerful chorus where it actually speeds up. So I have two questions. One, do crowds lose their shit when you get to that chorus? And two, was there ever a time where you were writing that song that the chorus didn't speed up, where it stayed the same speed, verse and chorus?
Yeah, that was one of the older ones we had. That was way before like I Want to Play and the other one we just Where Do You Go? And I remember that one, same thing, John Angus's Basement. I remember we had the first part, like the one tempo part, the slower, down, like the slower swungy kind of tempo. And I remember we kind of were like, we should do something crazy with it. Like we should just do something. I think maybe the White Stripes were a reference. Like a lot of times Jack White would do that with his show. Like he'd play a song, when the song would end, he just like he just go right into like without stopping and counting the next song. It'd be just like a feel change. And I think that was kind of the vibe of let's do something that's not normal here. Like how do you get the energy boosted like really quickly? It's just tempo, right? So we just kind of had that frantic kind of chorus part and then go back to the moody kind of swung part. So yeah, that was a cool kind of an experimental thing that once we did it, we were all like, ooh, that's cool. We should get this down. And then we, put on the album.
You mentioned Jack White. Did I see that you guys visited Third Man Records?
We were just there when we were in Detroit, right?
Yeah.
Detroit. Yeah, we were just there.
So did you get to see like the actual inside of the building, or was it?
Yeah, we were in the shop, and we saw the where they print records there, and Jack actually had his Jack White was not there, but he had his guitar, his rig, like his amp, his pedals and everything set up so people could kind of like hold it and look at his like the gear that he actually uses on stage. So pretty cool. I'm a big White Stripes fan from back in the day. I love Jack and I mean I like what he does now, but I like the earlier stuff. I love Meg, the drummer. Yeah. Not love like love her. Like I love her drumming. I love her approach to. She has a very Ringo approach to drums. For me, that's how I see her playing as. Like she plays the perfect part for the song, or played.
So I mentioned that every year I do an episode with the best albums of the year. Yep. So out of say the 20 most critically acclaimed albums that were released in 2022, 2 of the 20 were Jack White albums. So he put out 2 albums. One was like crazy guitar stuff, and then one was more acoustic singer-songwriter. So 2 completely different albums. And both of them were in the top 20 most acclaimed albums of the year. And I had his more electric one in my top 9 albums of the year. So that guy is from another planet. It's crazy.
Yeah, I really think he is. I really think there's nothing he can do musically that's not going to be, it's anything he does. If he picked up an instrument and started singing, it's going to be cool. Like instantly. And I don't think many current artists have that, like are that in tune with making stuff that's cool, no matter who he's playing with or what kind of style of music it is. He's one of the special ones.
So I have just 2 more songs from this album. So Another Year Zero, that's one of my favorites. And what I get out of it listening to the lyrics is, so we've had, say, the 3 years of the pandemic. And to me, it felt like, we're in the first year and things look like they're getting a little bit better. And then everything would restart and we'd lock down and go from scratch. And then we're in year 2 and things are getting better. And then it goes and it's even worse than the start. And it felt like, we feel like we're in year 1 and then we go back to year 0, the starting point. And now we're in year 3 and then it's like we're back in year 0. Like we've made no progress. That's kind of what I get out of the lyrics. I don't know if that's what it's actually about, but when I listened to it, that's what I took out of it. Like we just can't seem to make progress here.
Yeah, that's a cool interpretation of it. I don't really know what Colin was going for on that one, to be honest, but I just remember that was a different type of recording process. That was with Derek. And the drumming approach was really like I played the drums really quietly. Like it was very much like I don't know who's a good example. Like I wasn't like doing my normal drumming that I would do for the Trews. It was very like really soft and yeah, cool. Just trying to get that cool, laid back, ballady type of vibe. And I think we captured it well on that one for sure.
So, Song to Future Me. My notes are just, it's a beautiful acoustic song. And it seems like you have one beautiful acoustic song per album, at least for the two newest albums.
Yeah, those guys, the brothers always have a little kind of ditty that they always have working on. I mean, those guys write songs like in their sleep. I think like they're always. I think Colin writes songs in his sleep for sure. He's always got books and books and books and books of lyrics, and I think that goes back to the roots, doing the acoustic kind of quiet kind of songs. And yeah, I mean, I didn't get to play drums on that one, so that was just kind of their deal. And yeah, it's a beautiful song for sure. And they have a huge fan base that loves those types of songs that we always play in like our acoustic kind of broken down kind of sets. And yeah, people are suckers for those acoustic songs, so they keep on putting them out.
Yeah, they get you right in the feels. When you guys are playing live as the Trews, what song in the set list gets the biggest pop? Is it always the same song every night? Crowds just go wild.
No, crowds are different. I mean, some of the older hits definitely, you know, like depending on where we put them in the set list. Like just recently, last week I was in Winnipeg and we put Not Ready to Go in the encore, okay. Which was like man, my brain is yeah, that was our opening song for a long time, like just starting with Not Ready to Go. So saving it for the very end of the show was a cool thing, because just when it's like, okay folks, thanks, this is our last song of the encore, we're officially done now after this, and then you play a song that most people, like most everyone in the audience knows the song, and oh, it was their favorite back in the day. So yeah, that's one that always gets a good reaction. Highway of Heroes always gets a good reaction. So I think a lot of people have a lot of different you know, emotional reasons to like that song. That's always one that goes over well. Man, I mean, the set list is kind of riddled with hits that people like. And then we have new fans coming in now that are kind of discovering the band on the last two records that really want to hear songs from Civilianaires or Wanderers. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's like a song that people go the craziest for. We have been going out and doing something in the crowd. Ishmael and Maggie, we do like a really broken down acoustic version of that where we're literally acoustic. Like John Angus will unplug his acoustic and we'll go out into the middle of a really big venue and stand in the middle and sing a cappella, like no microphones, nothing, the guitar's not plugged in, like shh, 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 and everyone gets really quiet. And then I've got a quiet tambourine and we sing Ishmael, and we get the whole crowd going. People kind of have been freaking out over that the past. We've been doing that for like, I don't know, 6 to 8 months. So that's been a definite crowd pleaser. But yeah, the set's kind of set out to have bigger, older songs and then meshed in with newer stuff. Another big older song, like it's kind of flows where there's kind of hits hidden all throughout it.
So we have about 20 minutes left. So let's dive into the Whiskey Hunter. There's lots of exciting things going on right now. Cool. So the pandemic comes in, it decimates all these different industries. The music industry, live event industry, entertainment industry gets hit as hard, if not harder, than any other industry. How does that affect your life during that period, and how did you adapt? And this is where this kind of gave birth to the Whiskey Hunter.
Totally. Yeah. Well, it was right around the time where people were kind of realizing that this pandemic thing wasn't going to go away. And a lot of musicians started doing live streams and doing podcasts, doing Zooms, doing all this kind of technical new type of entertainment. And I was at home like going, okay, what am I going to do? Like do a live stream of me wailing on the drums? Like it's not going to sound good. It's like, it's going to get boring pretty quickly. So I was like, what can I do? You know, to not really to entertain people, but to entertain myself kind of thing. Like I'm a performer. That's what I do for a living. Right. I was like, there's gotta be something And I was thinking, and I was like, what should I do? So I was like, maybe I'll just go and do like a whiskey tasting live. Like I'll do a live stream of me tasting some whiskeys. And just because I think music is natural for me, like it's part of my life. I was like, well, I'll taste these whiskeys and I'll accompany myself. I'll play like a little song, a little cute whiskey song. I'll write something on guitar. And that, I mean, I did it on a Friday and I was like, man, that was a lot of fun. I'm going to do it next week. And I wrote another song and then I'm going to do it the next week. And next thing you know, I had a YouTube channel. And then the next thing you know, I got distilleries from all over the country sending me all of this. Like literally this collection is all from my YouTube channel, and people in the industry realizing that there's this guy who's like a rock and roll drummer dude who does this side project and he reviews whiskeys and he writes songs about it. So it became like it caught on quickly, and I did it really consistently. Like every Friday I was doing a new review, which always goes back to the music thing. I ended up getting really serious about writing kind of whiskey inspired music, to the point where I was like, oh, I like these songs a lot now. I'm not just playing them on my live streams or whatever on my YouTube channel. I should record them. And then I ended up putting music out on Spotify, and it's kind of still, I mean, I'm still getting stuff sent to me. I was writing songs right before I came on the podcast with you. It's kind of now whenever I'm home and I have free time, whenever I'm not touring with the band, I'm home working on the Whiskey Hunter. So,
I mean, of all the perks that you can get from having a YouTube channel, I mean, having 3 shelves full of whiskey, I'd say that's about as good as you can get. What do you think?
Yeah, for a whiskey fan, the only thing better than getting lots of whiskey is getting free whiskey. So for sure, it's a perk. I'm very grateful for all the companies that trust in my, the branding on my social media stuff, that they want me to promote them or share their stuff in posts and stuff. So it's been a fun ride, and a ride that I want to keep on riding out into the future for sure.
If ever you have a house party, you don't have to tell people to BYOB, because I think you're good for life here.
No, quite the opposite. When I have house parties, I don't let people come down the basement. I don't want anyone that doesn't appreciate the stuff to see the basement. Like, what's in the basement?
All these peasants, these amateurs that don't have a refined palate.
Don't come near these shelves yet.
Where does this love of whiskey come from? I mean, there's lots of great alcohol out there. Why whiskey? Just when it touches your lips, just exactly.
I've been into it for a couple decades. I'm Scottish. I've had some Scottish uncles and family friends that were big into, would come to my parents when I was younger at a house party, and they'd bring their own bottle of whiskey and they'd keep it in a bag and pull it out and pour themselves a drink and then put it away. And I was like, what are you doing? What's up with that? Like, oh, you've got to treasure this stuff. You've got to treat it with respect, and you've got to drink it, be sophisticated about it. And I was kind of always intrigued by that. And in my 20s, I guess I started my own little collection, but this was way before whiskey drinking became like a popular, I don't know what you know about it, but it's quite a popular thing now, especially on social media. But back then I just, I had my little collection, and I would do that. I would pour myself one drink at the end of a night and kind of analyze what I'm drinking and what it tastes like and how it makes me feel. And I'd take my own notes. And then fast forward to 2020, and it's like, I had nothing to do except do that. So I just kind of dove right in and did a lot of it.
So I'm not a heavy drinker. I don't know much about whiskey. So I need your help. As a good host, I have a bunch of alcohol in the fridge, and I have 2 whiskeys. So tell me if my whiskeys suck or if they're passable, if I'm actually a horrible host. So I'm a huge UFC fan. So I have Conor McGregor's Proper 12 whiskey, which is popular, but it's because it's attached to one of the biggest sports, people in the world, a big brand. And I also have, what's the other one? I have a Jack Daniel's unopened bottle in the fridge. So you tell me hit or miss, and then also tell me, regardless of price, what would you say of all the tastings you've done? What are your top 1, 2, 3 to get? And I can become the greatest host of all time based on your suggestion.
Well, first off, those are great picks, but I'm just going to let you know, if you talk to the wrong guy, the wrong whiskey person, he's going to say that those are terrible picks. So it's a personal thing, right? For me, I don't know if you see, but there's a lot of empty bottles of Jack Daniels back here. I'm a big Jack Daniels fan, but a
Okay.
lot of whiskey guys that do this stuff very seriously will say that that's like terrible, terrible stuff, and you should never put it to your lips. But for me, Jack kind of ties into the cross between whiskey world and the rock and roll world, and I love it, and I think it's a great whiskey. So I think that's a great one to have on your shelf, because I don't think many people at a party would turn down a Jack and Coke or Jack on Ice. The Proper 12 is also a great pick. I actually picked up a bottle of that for my wife's birthday. We just had some people over like not even a month ago, and her birthday's on St. Patty's Day. So I was going to get something Irish, and I went and I saw, I'm a fan of the UFC also, and I saw Connor's whiskey, and I had never had it, and I got it, and everyone loved it. And
Okay.
I was serving it on ice. My little advice for you, for like, if you do have whiskey on your shelf and you want to serve it at a party, I would just tell people, like I always tell people, yeah, here's a whiskey. It's Conor McGregor's whiskey. I would just tell people to take it slow. Don't like, you can start by pouring it in a nice glass and tell them not to. It's not meant to be like, if you pour it in a shot glass, that's a different type of whiskey drinking. You know what I mean? You pour it in a glass, maybe put some ice in it. Tell people just sip it slowly, and they're going to get a different experience from the whiskey, whether it's a Jack Daniels or whether it's like a really high end single malt Scotch. You know what I mean? Like, you just got to approach them differently. If you approach them that way, that kind of sophisticated approach, it's going to be a heightened experience for however cheap or expensive the whiskey is.
Okay. And for me to have the best whiskey tasting experience, do you keep it on the shelf? Do you keep it in the fridge? Do you have it just in the glass by itself? Do you have ice with it? What do we do here?
You can keep them on the shelf. Like, these don't go anywhere near a fridge. Keep them on the shelf. If you end up getting yourself, like, I don't know, you go out and buy something, or you're gifted a really high end, like a high end bottle of Scotch, like a single malt Scotch that's like $100 or $150 or more. What I would say is, pour it into a glass and pour yourself a little bit of it in a glass before you add ice to it. There's nothing wrong with adding ice or a little bit of water. It actually brings out different flavors that you won't get if you don't add ice. But I would just sip it first, or smell it, take a little sip and go, okay, this is really, really strong, but at least I know what the spirit tastes like in its natural kind of form. And then if it's too strong for you, add some ice and you're like, oh, this is beautiful. That's my tip. Like I said, other guys would be like, you can never add ice and you can never add water. And if you do, the Scottish, there'll be a curse on you. You know what I mean? Like, there's no such thing. It's however you're going to make that drinking experience better, whatever's going to taste better for you. That's what you got to do.
And if someone is unwilling to drink whiskey straight up and they just had to mix it with something, what are we supposed to mix with?
I mean, Jack and Coke is a badass drink. I don't drink it myself, but I did when I was a kid. I mean, now this stuff is so popular. Like, you can just, if you have a nice bottle of bourbon, like you have a Jack, well, it's a Tennessee whiskey, but you have even Jack Daniels, you could just type in easy whiskey cocktails with Jack Daniels, and there'll be a recipe of this, like Jack with like two other things. Mix, put some ice in it. It's going to taste great. And then therefore that person's getting the exposure to the whiskey, but something that's a little bit more palatable for them. So that, I would say, just make an easy cocktail. Make like something like a paper plane or something. These taste like candy. Everyone loves them.
Are there any songs or albums that get you in a whiskey drinking mood? I mean, there's songs that have it in their title, like Tennessee Whiskey from Chris Stapleton, or,
Yeah, I mean, during the beginning of the pandemic, when I was doing a lot of tastings and I didn't have kind of the whole whiskey song catalog that I have now, I'd listen to like old blues, and they're always singing about whiskey and being, down and out and dealing with the struggles of life. Like, I listened to, you ever heard of Son House? Like an old blues guy that would play guitar and sing. Sometimes he would just sing like very gospely, kind of just singing, clapping his hands, and like very like guttural kind of music that kind of inspired a lot of my whiskey writing, even though they weren't singing about whiskey. There's always that hint of whiskey in that type of music, I find, the old blues stuff. So I listen to some country artists now that like Morgan Wallen is like a huge country
He's
star.
amazing.
He's
Just put
got
out
some,
a new album a couple weeks ago.
yeah,
And he
with like,
always puts out double albums. His last two albums are like 30 some songs,
yeah,
and they're surprisingly solid. You would think that there's, I don't
yeah,
know, at least 9 songs that could have been scrapped and make the album stronger, but he's really
no,
good.
yeah, he's really good. And he has a lot of whiskey. A lot of the new country guys have a lot of whiskey songs. Some people think are pretty cheesy, but I kind of like the respect that they all show for the whiskey culture for sure.
And there's a debate on the proper spelling of the word whiskey. I'm going to be honest that I just always thought it was spelled EY because probably the whiskey that I end up receiving, usually for gifts, it's from a certain place where it's spelled EY.
Right.
In your case, it's spelled just Y at the end. And
Right.
isn't it like in Canada, it's more spelled without EY or other places? Can
Yeah,
you?
most Canadian, I think it's a country thing. So most Canadian whiskeys are just with the Y. American whiskey is with the EY. I think Irish is also with the EY. And then the Scottish single malt whiskey is with the Y also. So because my first love was like the single malt stuff, the Scotch whiskey spelt with the Y, that's kind of why I went with that spelling. And that's kind of the spelling I always go for. I'm a big fan of bourbon now and American whiskey now, and that's always got not the wrong spelling, the opposite spelling. So
They're doing it wrong.
Always writing those the wrong way. But I think much like the adding ice and water to your drinks and the spelling of whiskey, it's like everyone just needs to get along and just it's all a whiskey. Just it's meant to be enjoyed and it's meant to be shared in social settings. Like it's meant to be a beautiful thing. I don't care how you spell it or how you drink it.
The spelling reminds me of city and color. So with the word color, some have a U and some have just OR. And
Right.
because city and color is Canadian, and I know it's OUR. So that's what tells me, okay, Canadians spell color OUR,
Right.
and other places, maybe America, they spell it just OR. So
Right.
that, a little Canadian thing there that tells you how to spell. And like whiskey, EY or just Y, they're both correct. It's just
Yeah.
where is it originating from, essentially. Let's talk about your new song, Good Morning. So this song comes out, it's getting a lot of press. It's this kind of this feel-good anthem that people love. What's the inspiration behind that song?
Well, I mean, the inspiration was my children. I have twins. They're pandemic babies. They kind of were born right when the Whiskey Hunter, when I started reviewing whiskeys, that like right around the same time I was in lockdown and, couldn't tour, couldn't travel. And at the same time I had twins. So they've been around since the inception of the Whiskey Hunter idea. And, like good children, they become big fans of daddy's music. But unfortunately, daddy's music is all about drinking whiskey. So my kids, they sing my songs a lot, sing them back to me, and that's cute. But I was kind of like, me and my wife were like, all they think about and sing about is whiskey songs. And maybe I should write something different for them. That wasn't like I didn't purposely do this, but it was in the back of my mind. And at the time, I had this little ditty that I had in my head that I would sing when I'd go into their rooms in the morning to wake them up to go to daycare, and I'd sing good morning, like just like something cute to kind of get them to be happy when they wake up and not be screaming because they have a dirty diaper. But I kept on doing it, and the kids reacted to it, and they would sing it back to me, and they would ask me to sing the good morning song, and I was like, oh, maybe I have something here. So I flushed out the idea, and then I showed it to my producer, and he was like, man, this is definitely not a whiskey song, but it's something nice. We should put it down. And I recorded it, and I thought about putting it out under a different name. And then I was like, oh man, it's so complicated to come up, you know what I mean? Like come up with a whole different branding for one song. So I just put it out under the Whiskey Hunter, and people have been reacting to it. Like, I mean, there's not many songs about that give you that kind of positive little bit of hope in the morning, and it's nice and light and casual, and I think people like that kind of vibe in the morning. So yeah, I've had some great press across the country. I've been doing morning shows across the country, and it's been fun, and people have been digging the tune, so I'm happy.
So I said, there might be a few more kind words, a few more quotes. So I have at least one more. So here's the final quote of the interview. And it's from the co-writer of the song Good Morning. Also, he produced and mixed the song. This is Carl Jennings from Freedom Train, who I've been in touch with. He's actually come up a few times in different interviews to show how intertwined he is in the Canadian music industry. And this is what Carl has to say. This is a long one, so hang tight with me. He says, Chris is the best. That's a good way to start a quote. Not only is he one of the best drummers I've ever worked with, he plays many other instruments incredibly well: guitar, piano, ukulele, and vocals. The guy is a force. He's written hundreds of songs and is always looking for creative inspiration in everything he does. But more important than all of that, Chris is a great guy. The kind of guy who gets things done. The kind of guy you want on your team. The kind of guy that makes whatever you're doing super fun. I've been working with Chris on many different projects for the past 20 years. I've also hired him to be the drummer on hundreds of sessions I've produced with dozens of different clients. Every single time he plays for the song, he tries to blend into the sound of the song as if he's in the band. He always puts the song's needs first. That's why he's in such demand. He's an absolute pro. I'm lucky to call him my best friend, Carl Jennings.
Wow, man.
What a sweetie.
What a sweetheart. Yeah. Thanks, Carl.
There you go. That's from Carl. Now, as we wrap up, I have just a few more questions. These are the hardest, deepest, most difficult questions. Can you handle just a few more here?
I can handle it. Let's do it.
All right. So you've had all this success. Do you have any dreams that you still have in your heart that you have yet to attain? Anything you're still working towards?
I do have some secret goals that I won't share, but I have some other ones. Yeah, I mean, I really love writing with people, and as every year goes by, I get hooked up with different artists that I actually get to write with, and that's, I don't have specific people that I'm like, oh man, one day I want to write with this person. I just want that, I guess the clientele that I get to write with, I want that to continue to grow, because I think with every new artist I work with, it's like you learn different things. You get to see how other musicians kind of tick, and get to be creative with different people. And I love that process. As far as playing wise, I mean, I'm always kind of working on my craft, always trying to improve, and always kind of keeping an eye out for the next challenge. I don't know what that next challenge might be. Is it going to be hired to do some cool recording sessions, or play with some other band? Just recently I did a tour with a guy, and he, his manager called me and wanted me to go on this tour, and I could fit it into my schedule. And I was like, that's great. I'll start learning the songs, on drums, which is what I assumed I would be doing. And the manager was like, well, no, we don't want you to play drums. We want you to play piano and ukulele. And I was like, oh, I've never done that before. Like I play piano and ukulele all the time, but I've never done it on tour with an artist. And I was like, well, when's the tour? Like, oh, 6 weeks. I was like, okay, I'll figure this out. And I learned all the material on ukulele. The ones that didn't fit uke, I learned them on piano. And I got to do a tour with him, and it was awesome, because it was like, I mean, it felt the same as touring with any other band, but I wasn't doing the thing that I feel natural doing. You know what I mean? I had to think like, oh, what key is this in? Like I had to think about the uke, and I had to think about playing dynamically on the piano. So that was, I want to do more of that. Like I just love new musical challenges. I think it just keeps me, I mean, I'm very excited about music, but it keeps me like really like, oh, I gotta do this. I gotta get downstairs and do my homework. So that keeps me alive.
When you look back on your life and career, what are you most proud of and most grateful for?
I mean, for someone who's been doing it as long as I've been doing it, I think I'll knock on plastic here. I'm proud, I guess, and fortunate that I haven't quit doing music. I mean, man, the music business is it's a hard business. It looks super cool and it looks super fun on social media, but it takes its toll on you physically, it takes its toll on you emotionally, it takes its toll on the people that are in your family. Like it's a tough grind, I think, doing music full time. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm proud that I'm still able to do it, but it's not like a pride thing. It's more like I'm fortunate that I get to still do it. Yeah, that just existing in this world is kind of, I guess, my biggest accomplishment, bigger than, I played on this record, or I did this tour, I opened up for this band. I think the bigger accomplishment is like I'm still here, and I still get to do, the thing that I love since I was a kid.
Yeah, the longevity is what you're most proud of and also most grateful for, because it's there has to be fans there that are supporting you for that career to continue. So
totally, yeah.
So we have a tradition on the podcast where we have the current guest leave a question for the next guest without knowing who it is. So we have a question here from the last interview. This is from Bill Priddle from the platinum selling band Treble Charger. And his question for you is, what do you do to take yourself out of your comfort zone?
Oh, good question. I mean, like that last story I just told you about taking that gig where I was playing an instrument that's not my main instrument. I think whenever I find something that's like, ooh, this is out of my comfort zone, my approach to that would be like, screw it. Like, let's just do it. I'm gonna do it. I took that gig. I mean, I knew the back of my mind that I could do it, but I was also like, ooh, it's gonna take some work, and I don't know how I'm gonna pull that one off. I just kind of dove in. That's what I do when something comes up where it's like, this is not in my comfort zone. I just say, screw it, man. There's not enough time to sit back and think about things and worry about them. It's just like, just go for it. Don't think about it. Music is you shouldn't think too much. I try to be reactive and try to be emotional, as opposed to, ooh, this is uncomfortable. You know what I mean? If it's uncomfortable, it's like, I just got to dive in and make it comfortable.
And can you now provide a question for the next guest without knowing who it is, male, female, age, industry, anything come to you?
So it doesn't have to be a music question?
No, it could be an author. It could be someone, I've had NHL players, just someone that has achieved a level of mastery in whatever they're passionate about. Any questions?
I got a question. So my question is, like, kind of over the course of our podcast, we've talked about the things that I've done, but we've highlighted some of the things that I love the most. Like, I love the songwriting and the creative process the most, or maybe I love playing live in front of people the most. My question would be, of your passion, like of the thing that you do that you love, like I love playing music, or I love being a painter, or I love playing hockey, whatever. What's the one thing, the one thing of all the things that encompass your passion? What's the one thing that you love the most? The thing that gives you the goosebumps and gives you those tingly feelings? Because for me, like I can think of that, you know what I mean? I love playing live. I love going on tour. I love writing, but I love when I create, or I think I'm creating a little bit of magic with people, with my band, by myself, with my producer, with songwriters. I love that moment of like, oh, the light shines down from above, and it's like you make something, and you feel that little bit, that magic moment. I love that. So my question is, what is the thing that you love the most about your passion?
Awesome. And final question, if you could go back in time and you could sit down next to your 10-year-old self, if you took all the life lessons over the years since then, the training and mentorship and ups and downs and the good and the bad, if you could whisper some advice into cute little Chris's ear to help him navigate the human experience, what advice do you give him?
Well, on the whiskey side of things, as soon as I was of age to buy alcohol, I would have bought, decently expensive bottles and buried them in my backyard and stored them for years, because I'd be a rich man right now. Wisdom, man, I would just say, like, once you find something, like, I know a lot of people that you know, I've taught drums throughout the years, and I know a lot of kids that have had passions. I love video games, or I love basketball, I love hockey, I love drums. Like, my advice would be kind of the way I tried to approach it, but even more so. Like, if you find something that you're passionate about, that you know you might have a little bit of talent towards, and you like it, I would just say, just dive in, man, and just go for it and give it like 110%, because there's always people out there that started liking it before you and got a big head start, and people that have more natural talent, and people that have easier connections into that world. And so you just got to work. You got to work hard at the thing that it's good to just love something, but if you want to love it and like excel at it, you just got to do the work and put in the time. That goes for music, that goes for anything in life. That's what I think.
So for our listeners that have stuck with us for the last 2+ hours, where can they find you online, whether it's a website or social media, if they want to stick in the loop with what you're up to, if they maybe want to reach out and they want you to play on their next album, where can they go to find you between the Whisky Hunter and the Trews?
Yeah, well, the Trews, I mean, just type in the Trews, you can find them anywhere, all social platforms. The Whisky Hunter on Instagram is my main Instagram. Facebook is just the Whisky Hunter, or on Instagram it's the.whisky.hunter. But if you type in the Whisky Hunter, I come up. I'm pretty active there. And then also my Facebook, you can just type in my name, Chris Gormley. I get a lot of DMs from people for stuff. I get hired for sessions and stuff like that there. And I'm also on YouTube, the Whisky Hunter. Find me there. I've got reviews on there. I've got my music videos up there. And yeah, I'm around. I'm always down to collaborate on stuff and you know, give advice to people if they're looking for it about the business.
Is there anything you'd like to say to the fans that have supported you over the last 20+ years, regardless of what project you're a part of?
Yeah, I'm always grateful for music fans. I think music fans are a unique, you know, dedicated music fans are a unique group of people that keep on coming out to shows and keep on buying concert tickets and keep on buying albums. And a lot of these people that support the Trews or support myself or support my band in the past, like, they're bigger music fans than I am. I think, like, than the actual musicians. You know what I mean? I think musicians are too busy sometimes working at music to even be fans of music sometimes, where you have people that are not in the music world, but they're such huge fans and they give so much to the music business. So yeah, I'm just grateful that there's people like that still exist. So thanks everyone.
And as we wrap up here, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for your lifelong pursuit of mastery as a drummer and as a singer-songwriter. I want to thank you for keeping the Big Sugar train alive for those 3 or 4 years as their drummer. I want to thank you for releasing great music with the Trews over the last 5 years or so with those 2 albums that we dove into. I want to commend you. I want to acknowledge you for being a source of positivity and inspiration during the pandemic. You know, there was a lot of isolation and mental health issues and darkness, and you chose to be a bright light, a source of positivity, helping to make the world a better place. So I appreciate that. And last but not least, I want to say thank you, just as a fan of yours, a fan of the music, the bands you've been a part of, for sitting down with me for the last 2+ hours to answer all my silly questions, all the things I wanted to know about. Thank you for being open and honest and transparent and answering all these, 10 pages worth of questions or something stupid. So thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks for having me, man. That was 2 hours. That was a quick 2 hours. You're good at what you do.
Hey, thank you so much. So to our listeners, to the Chris fans, to the Trews fans, to the Whisky Hunter fans, thanks for sticking with us, and we'll see you on the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's episode of the podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. What I want to know is, who would you like me to sit down with next for a 2-hour deep dive interview? You can let me know by reaching out to me on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Joel Martin Mastery. Joel is Joel. And you can find me on Twitter and Snapchat at Joel Mastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.